see. Okay, share screen. So now you can see my screen. Huh?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so El Nino Southern Oscillation Index. Sorry, El Nino Southern Oscillation. No? El Nino Southern Oscillation or ENSO. Okay, so ENSO stands for El Nino, okay, El Nino and Southern Oscillation. So there's a two word. El Nino is one, El Nino and Southern Oscillation. So they join this word together, and then they call it El Nino Southern Oscillation. That's why it's called ENSO. So today we'll have to discuss in detail what is El Nino Southern Oscillation. Before that, I understand maybe you've heard the word El Nino or you've heard the word La Nina. Now we'll break into detail what is El Nino, what is La Nina, or in general what is El Nino Southern Oscillation. First of all, the El Nino Southern Oscillation is the interaction between the ocean and the atmosphere. Okay, that is, we're talking about the Pacific Ocean. Okay, you know we have three oceans in the world. We have Atlantic Ocean, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean. But the Pacific Ocean is the biggest ocean on the earth. So El Nino is the interaction between the ocean, Pacific Ocean, and the atmosphere. So for here, you see here they said ENSO. ENSO is a couple. ENSO is a couple atmospheric oceanic process. Okay, so ENSO is the interaction between the Pacific Ocean and the atmosphere. So the interactions between the Pacific Ocean and the atmosphere produce El Nino and La Nina. Okay, so when we talk about ENSO, ENSO is either El Nino or La Nina or neutral. Okay, so there are three phases of ENSO. There are three phases of ENSO. One is El Nino, one is La Nina, or neutral. For example, if you happen to follow weather update from the Vanuatu Meteorological Services, what kind of phases are we in now? We are in El Nino or La Nina?
La Nina?
Yes. So now we are in the La Nina phase. Okay. So now we in the La Nina phase. So there are three phases of ENSO. Neutral, El Nino. We have neutral. That is one. Two, we have El Nino or we have La Nina. So now we are currently in a La Nina phase. So ENSO, remember, ENSO is the interaction between the Pacific Ocean and the atmosphere. Okay, the interaction between Pacific Ocean and the atmosphere. So I will show you. I will show you one. Go straight to the point. Okay, so for example, this is the Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean on the screen, and then we have the interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere, and then it causes heavy rainfall in the Southwest Pacific. So that is why we call it a La Nina phase. Okay, so these pictures here, this figure shows the interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere. So when we talk about the interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere, it's to do with the heat exchange between the ocean and the atmosphere, and then it produces El Nino and La Nina. So okay, so source of interannual variability. So ENSO is the source of interclimate variability that we have in the Pacific. Okay. Interannual variability. Interannual variability. Annual, it means year. Okay. Annual, it means year. Inter, it means in the year. So ENSO is a major source of climate variability that we have in the Pacific or in the world, in the whole world. Okay. So ENSO is one of the source of climate variability. Climate variability is when we have variations in our climatic conditions. That is climate variability. When we talk about climate variability, it means sometimes we have high rainfall, sometimes we have low rainfall, sometimes we have windy conditions, sometimes we have less windy conditions, sometimes we have more tropical cyclones, sometimes we have less tropical cyclone, sometimes we have more rough seas, sometimes we have less rough seas, sometimes we have high temperatures, sometimes we have low temperatures. Those are examples of climate variability. Okay, so when we talk about climate variability, it's about variations in our climatic conditions. Okay, high rainfall, low rainfall is a climate variability. High temperature, low temperature is a climate variability. More windy conditions, less windy conditions is a climate variability. More tropical cyclone in this season is a climate variability. So ENSO is one of the major source of climate variability that we have in the Pacific or in the world. Okay, so El Nino Southern Oscillation is the main source of climate variability that we have in Vanuatu or in the Pacific or in the world. Okay. The second thing that we have to understand is how do we know that we will be having an El Nino? How do we know that we'll be having an El Nino or La Nina? Okay, so there are certain variables that are used to measure the intensity of El Nino or La Nina. So okay, ENSO evolution. Huh? ENSO evolution. How do we know How do we know? Okay, first of all, ENSO happen every 2 to 7 years. Okay, every 2 to 7 years, we expecting to have an ENSO. And remember, when we talk about ENSO, it means we having a La Nina or El Nino or neutral. Okay, those are the three phases of ENSO. So ENSO will happen every 2 to 7 years. Okay, every 2 to 7 years, we expecting to have an El Nino or La Nina or neutral ENSO. Okay, every 2 to 7 years, we expecting to have El Nino, La Nina, or neutral ENSO. Okay, so for example, in 1987, there was El Nino, and then in 1989, there was La Nina, and then in 1991, there was El Nino, and then in 1995, there was El Nino. 1997, there was an El Nino. 1999, there was a La Nina. 2003, there was an El Nino. Okay, so one of the confusion by most of the students think that El Nino and La Nina are seasonal climate events. No, El Nino and La Nina are not seasonal climate events, because a seasonal climate event, it means it comes every year. Okay, for example, a cyclone, we have a cyclone season. That is why every year we have a cyclone season, because that is a season. Okay, it comes every year. No matter what, there will be a cyclone season. Just like mangoes, huh? We have a season for mangoes. So it means every year we expecting mangoes, because every year we expect mangoes, because it is a season. It is a seasonal thing. But for El Nino and La Nina, it is not. El Nino and La Nina are not seasonal climatic events. Okay, because they can happen every 2 to 7 years. They can happen every 2 to 7 years, and then the oceanic component of ENSO is El Nino. Okay, so El Nino is to do with temperature of the ocean. Okay, El Nino is to do with temperature of the ocean, and then the southern oscillation is to do with atmospheric pressure difference between Darwin and Tahiti. Okay, so okay, let me show you this pictures again. Huh? Okay. Why we have El Nino and La Nina? Because it's to do with shifting of the why we have El Nino and La Nina is because it's to do with shifting of the warm Pacific pool. So in order to understand this concept, I want to show you a video. And the video is in Bislama. So after you will watch this video, and then I will further explain what is El Nino and La Nina. So okay. cloud. Okay. So you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome to Vanuatu. This is island life at its best. The fields are planted, the songs are sweet, and the wet season is on its way. In the wet season, it's like there's a big Masara or meeting place up there in the sky where clouds in the Pacific gather. The water in the clouds comes from the warm pool, and the clouds are brought together in the Masara by the trade winds. The Meteor Office calls this cloud Masara, the South Pacific Convergence Zone. The cloud Masara moves throughout the year, causing our usual seasons. The dry season happens from May to October. And the wet season, which is also cyclone season, runs from November to April. This cycle means things are just right for a good harvest. Some years, the trade winds weaken, causing the warm pool and the cloud Masara that forms above it to move away from Vanuatu. The Meteor Office calls this El Nino. El Nino has a big influence on our lives, mostly during the wet season. It usually means less rain, drought, and sometimes even food shortages. El Nino and its impacts usually last for 1 year or so, and then things return to normal. But El Nino can sometimes last longer. In some years, the opposite of El Nino occurs. The Meteor Office calls this La Nina. During La Nina, trade winds get stronger, and the cloud Masara usually moves southwest, often bringing more rain than normal to Vanuatu. During La Nina, heavy rains, landslides, and flooding are more likely. This can lead to flooded roads, damaged infrastructure, and waterlogged crops. The Meteor Office is always watching to make seasonal forecasts about likely rain and drought conditions for the months ahead. You can hear these forecasts on the radio. El Nino and La Nina are not climate change. They are part of the normal climate system. Climate change may intensify some of the impacts of El Nino and La Nina in the future. Learning how to adapt to the natural ups and downs in our climate will help prepare for long-term climate change. You can take action by keeping up to date with seasonal forecasts. Warnings of El Nino and La Nina events can be used in your community to prepare for the coming season. And don't forget, whatever the weather, have a nice day. That form, Nino has a big that forms above it.
Okay, so the main issue here with the El Nino and La Nina is the shifting of the warm Pacific pool. So when we talk about the warm Pacific pool, this is the warm Pacific pool. So remember, when the ocean is warmer, then we expect more rainfall in our region. Okay, so if the warm Pacific pool is in the Western Pacific, and then we expecting more rainfall in Western Pacific. If the warm Pacific pool shift to Eastern Pacific, and then more rainfall will be shifting to Eastern Pacific, and then we'll be having an El Nino. So the key thing here is to do with the shifting of the warm Pacific pool. Okay, so I'll close this one. Go down to go down this one. Okay, so the key thing about El Nino and La Nina is the shifting of the warm Pacific pool. Okay, like now we have a La Nina. We have a La Nina situation. So that means the warm Pacific pool is over Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Vanuatu, Solomon Island region. Okay, so the warm Pacific pool is in the Western Pacific. That is why we have more rainfall in Vanuatu, Solomon, Australia. Okay, so during this time of the year, we have a lot of rainfall in Vanuatu, Solomon, and Australia, as well as Fiji. Okay, and the key thing here is that this La Nina situation happened during our normal wet season. So that means additional rainfall. That means in Vanuatu, we're expecting additional rainfall that happened during our normal wet season. Okay, remember, the normal wet season in Vanuatu is from November to April. That's normal. That's normal climate season in Vanuatu. The wet season is from November to April, and the dry season is from May to October. Okay, if we have a La Nina, and then the La Nina happened during our wet season, then additional rainfall will be added in Vanuatu or in the Pacific, because the La Nina happened during our normal wet season, which is November to April. Okay. On the other hand, if we have an El Nino, and the El Nino happened during our normal dry season, which is May to October, then we'll be having additional dry conditions in Vanuatu or in the Pacific, because the El Nino happened during our normal dry season, which is May to October. Okay, so the main thing that you have to understand about El Nino and La Nina is the shifting of the warm Pacific pool. Okay, shifting of the warm Pacific pool, and then it leads to shifting of rainfall. So that is why we have El Nino and La Nina. Okay. Okay, during our lectures, if you have any questions, just interrupt and ask the questions. Okay, so El Nino, the word El Nino, it means the boy child. The boy child. The word El Nino, it means the boy child. And the opposite, which is La Nina, it means the girl child. Okay. El Nino is the Latin word for the boy child, and long time ago in Peru, and Ecuador in South America, the fishermen in Peru and Ecuador, they noticed that when it comes to Christmas holiday, and then the weather pattern changed. The weather pattern changed, and then it happened around Christmas holiday. That is why they refer to this change of weather pattern as El Nino. El Nino because it happened around Christmas. And El Nino in Latin, it means the boy child. Okay, so El Nino, it means the boy child, and it was first recognized by the fishermen in Peru and Ecuador, and it happened around Christmas time. So that is why they say the boy child or the Christ child, referring to the birth of Jesus Christ. Huh? Okay, so and then the opposite is La Nina, which is the girl child. Okay, so in Vanuatu, we also have the local names for El Nino and La Nina. So if you from Ampai or Tana or Torres or Torpa in general or Efate, if you talk to your elders, they will mention some specific names. Okay, some specific names that they used to describe the climatic conditions before. Okay, so that is one of the area of research that it has to be done in Vanuatu to document our local names for El Nino and La Nina. Because El Nino and La Nina, that's the term that was used by the fishermen from Peru and Ecuador in South America. But in Vanuatu, we have our local names for El Nino and La Nina. For example, in Fiji, they will call El Nino Bravusinga in Fiji. Yeah? It's a disaster that is linked with the sun. Okay, sun means longer period of sun, less rain, and then they have less water. So they say it's a disaster. It's a disaster that is related to the sun. Okay, so in Fiji, El Nino, they call it Brownisinga. So in Vanuatu, we also have the local names for El Nino and La Nina. So since you are doing this course, you can ask your elders or people from your community what is the local name for drought in your language, or what is the local name for heavy rainfall in your local language. Okay. So, okay. How? Wait, to show you. Okay. The Southern Oscillation Index is used to measure the strength of El Nino or La Nina. Okay. The Southern Oscillation Index is the pressure difference between Darwin and Tahiti. Okay, the Southern Oscillation Index. Okay. The Southern Oscillation Index is the pressure difference between Tahiti and Darwin. Okay. It's called SOI, yeah? SOI. SOI. So when SOI is positive, then we'll be having a La Nina. When SOI is negative, then we'll be having an El Nino. Okay, so when the Southern Oscillation is positive, we'll be having an La Nina. When the Southern Oscillation is negative, we'll be having a El Nino. Okay, for example, now this year is 2022. Huh? So here, the SOI is how many? 17.1. Okay, that is why we have an El Nino. Sorry, we have a La Nina. Okay, we have a La Nina because the SOI is 17.1 in 2022. In 2015, okay, Cyclone Pam came in 2015.
Yes.
Okay, after Cyclone Pam, then we have then there was an El Nino drought in Vanuatu after Cyclone Pam. Remember? Okay, at that time the SOI was negative. Okay, SOI was minus 19.8. Okay, SOI was minus 19.8. So that is where we have an El Nino in 2015 after Cyclone Pam. 2018. What happened in 2018? 2018 we have an what? El Nino or La Nina? 18.
La Nina.
La Nina. La Nina because SOI was positive. 2013 we have an La Nina because SOI was positive. Okay. Now in Vanuatu we have a La Nina 2022. Okay. While we have a La Nina In 2022, we have a lot of rainfall in Vanuatu. Kiribati and Tuvalu, they have less rainfall. So why during La Nina there is more rainfall in Vanuatu and less rainfall in Kiribati? Hmm?
No.
Because during La Nina, the warm Pacific bull shifted to West Pacific. Okay, during La Nina. Okay, during La Nina. Wait, I'll show you this one. Wait, that. Okay. This is during La Nina. During La Nina, the warm Pacific bull is in the Western Pacific. That is why we have a lot of rainfall in Vanuatu. Kiribati is here. That is why less rainfall in Kiribati now. Okay. So So 2022, while we have a lot of rainfall in Kiribati because of La Nina, in 2022, while we have a lot of rainfall in Vanuatu because of La Nina, Kiribati, they have less rainfall. Okay, so if we check the news, Kiribati declare state of, okay. So this is the news from Kiribati. See? Kiribati government declares state of disaster from drought. Okay, so it's the opposite. It's the opposite. During La Nina, we have a lot of rainfall in Vanuatu, while Kiribati have a lot of drought, less rainfall. Okay, during El Nino, it will be opposite. During El Nino, we'll have a lot of, during El Nino, we'll have less rainfall in Vanuatu, more rainfall in Kiribati. Okay, because it's to do with shifting. It's to do with shifting of the Pacific bull. Okay, so that is one of the very important character of El Nino and La Nina. One of the very important character of El Nino and La Nina that you have to understand, that the impacts of El Nino in Pacific is different. In Fiji, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, BNC, Australia will have a lot of rainfall during La Nina, while Kiribati, Tuvalu, Beru, in South America, they will have less rainfall. And then the opposite will happen during El Nino. Okay, there's another news from Australia that I want to show you. Australia. Australian floods. Okay. So there's a lot of rainfall in Australia now. There's a lot of rainfall in Australia now because of La Nina. Okay. Maybe I would show you some image. Okay, so there's a lot of rainfall in Australia now because of La Nina, while Kiribati they have less rainfall. The government declared drought. Okay, so how we measure the strength of El Nino by using the Southern Oscillation Index. Okay, the Southern Oscillation Index is used to measure the strength of El Nino or La Nina. The Vanuatu meteorological offices or any office in the Pacific, any meteorology office in the Pacific, they always monitor the Southern Oscillation Index. Okay, when the Southern Oscillation Index is negative, and then they will give out warning that we expecting an El Nino. When the Southern Oscillation will be positive, and then they will give out a warning that we expecting a La Nina and then more rainfall. Okay, and the other thing I want to show you is okay. This one is 27 June. This image, this is the image of the sea surface temperature in the Pacific from June, 27 June to 3 July. Okay, 3 July, that is today is 6, yesterday is 5, or Sunday. Okay, so here, this one, okay, this reddish color here, it means the sea surface temperature is high in Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Solomon, New Caledonia, Fiji. Okay, the sea surface temperature is high in our part of the Pacific. Okay, so the sea surface temperature is high in Papua New Guinea, Australia, New Caledonia, and Fiji. Sea surface temperature, okay, SST as well. Sea surface temperature, SST. Okay, so the sea surface temperature is high in our region, and then here it means the cooler, okay, cooler sea surface temperature. Cooler sea surface temperature in Kiribati, in Tuvalu, right up to South America. Okay, so the cooler sea surface temperature. Okay. Okay, why? The question is why did the high sea surface temperature shift to West Pacific? Okay, what causes the high sea surface temperature to shift to Western Pacific? Remember the video? This video here.
The
Wind. The winds. When the southeast trade wind is stronger, and then it blows over the Pacific Ocean, and then it shifts the warm Pacific pool to the Western Pacific. Okay, we saw the video again.
During La Nina,
Okay, listen to this one. During La Nina, the southeast trade winds will be stronger. Okay.
During La Nina, trade winds get stronger, and the cloud Asara usually moves southwest.
Okay. So during La Nina, the southeast trade wind is stronger, and then it blows over the Pacific Ocean, and then it shifts the warm pool to the Western Pacific. That is why we have more rainfall during La Nina. Okay, I'll repeat this video again, because I want you guys to understand this concept, because it is a very important concept to understand about El Nino and La Nina. Okay, so we have to listen to this one again.
During La Nina, trade winds get stronger and the cloud Nasara usually moves southwest, often bringing more rain than normal to Vanuatu.
Okay, so kabag lo i-explain niya why the sea surface temperature is why the high sea surface temperature shift to Vanuatu, Fiji, BNG because of the wind. Okay, the strong southeast trade winds blows over the Pacific Ocean. It shifts the warm pool to the Western Pacific. That is why we have a lot of rainfall in Vanuatu, Australia, Fiji, New Caledonia, while less rainfall in Tuvalu and Kiribati. And then that is why the Kiribati government declared a state of emergency in 2022 because of less rainfall in Kiribati, while high rainfall in Vanuatu, Australia, Fiji, PNG, Indonesia, Philippines, etc. Okay. Okay, this is another picture to show you. This is during El Nino. During La Nina. During La Nina, trade winds blow strongest over the Pacific Ocean, and then the warm Pacific pool is over Western Pacific. So that is why we have more rainfall in Vanuatu, Solomon, Australia, New Caledonia, PNG, even Philippines, as well as India. Okay. And then during El Nino, the southeast trade wind is weak. And then we have westerly winds, okay? So during El Nino, the warm Pacific pool will shift to central equatorial Pacific, okay, central Pacific. Okay, so during El Nino, there will be, during El Nino, the southeast trade winds will be weak, and then the westerly winds will come stronger, and then it will push the warm Pacific pool to central Pacific, and then there will be more rainfall in Tuvalu, Kiribati, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, even America, while we'll be having drought in Vanuatu. Okay, and then this shifting of warm Pacific pool, it also influenced migration of tuna in the Pacific. Okay, during El Nino, for example, during La Nina, okay, during La Nina there will be more. During La Nina, the warm Pacific, the sea surface temperature will be high in the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Australia. So that means more tuna will migrate to Solomon Islands and BNG or Vanuatu. And then during La Nina, during El Nino, when the during El Nino, when the warm sea surface temperature shift to Tuvalu and Kiribati, and then more tuna will migrate to Tuvalu and Kiribati. So this shifting of the warm Pacific pool does not only affect rainfall, but it also affect the migration of tuna in the Pacific. So that means during La Nina, we're expecting more tuna in Solomon Islands, Vanuatu. That is why we have Solomon Tayo. Okay, we have Solomon Tayo. They have more tuna in the Solomon Islands because of the high sea surface temperature in the Solomon Islands. Okay, because of high sea surface temperature in the Solomon Islands, so they have more tuna in the Solomon Islands. So that is why they can produce the Solomon Tayo that you have in Vanuatu. Okay, so So, okay, so let's come back to this image. Okay. So the climate, okay, remember I told you to measure the strength of El Nino, we are using the Southern Oscillation Index. Remember, when the Southern Oscillation is positive, we have La Nina. When the Southern Oscillation is negative, we have El Nino. Okay. Apart from the Southern Oscillation Index that is used to measure the strength of El Nino, the climate scientists also use the sea surface temperature. Okay. The climate scientists also use the sea surface temperature to measure the strength of El Nino and La Nina. Okay, so if the sea surface temperature is high in the Western Pacific, then we're expecting a La Nina. If the sea surface temperature is high in the Central Pacific, then we're expecting an El Nino. Okay? Because remember, ENSO is the interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere. ENSO. Okay? ENSO is the interactions between the ocean and the atmosphere. O pa ibig sabihin lo pislama, se ENSO how ocean with the atmosphere to like exchange some energy. So that is why when we monitor El Nino and La Nina, we have to use the Southern Oscillation Index, which measure the atmospheric component of ENSO, and then we will also use the sea surface temperature, which is the oceanic component of ENSO. Okay, so we use the Southern Oscillation Index to measure El Nino, and then we use the sea surface temperature to measure El Nino and La Nina. Okay, the other thing I want to show is cloudiness. The other atmospheric component that is used to measure El Nino and La Nina is the amount of cloud. Okay, the amount of cloud in the atmosphere. Okay, if a lot of cloud is in the Western Pacific, and then we'll be having a La Nina. If a lot of cloud in the Central Pacific, and then we'll be having an El Nino. Okay, so the amount of cloud in the atmosphere is also used to measure El Nino and La Nina, or the amount of cloud in the atmosphere is also used to indicate whether we'll be having an El Nino or La Nina. Okay, okay. Okay, monitoring of ENSO. I've already mentioned the monitoring of ENSO. The Southern Oscillation Index. Okay, the Southern Oscillation Index is the pressure difference between the wind and Tahiti. Eh? Okay, wait. Okay, climate. climate impacts related to ENSO. Okay, so what are the climate impacts related to ENSO? Okay, so remember when we talk about ENSO, we are referring to either El Nino, La Nina, or neutral. Okay. Climate impacts related to ENSO. Okay. When we have La Nina, in the Pacific, it means we'll be having more rainfall in Vanuatu, while less rainfall in Kiribati. Okay, when we have more rainfall in Vanuatu, it means we'll be having landslide, we'll be having floods, okay, a lot of rainfall and flooding, and then we'll be having more cyclone, okay, more cyclone. During La Nina, we'll be having more cyclone in Vanuatu, but more cyclone will be formed close to Australia, and then they will be coming towards Vanuatu. That is during El Nino. Okay, if we go back to our, this one. Okay, so now for the last cyclone season is November to April. The last cyclone season was November 2021 to April 2022. Okay, so from November 2021 to April 2022 cyclone season, we have more cyclone developing close to Australia. Okay, so we have during La Nina. Okay, during La Nina we'll be having more cyclone here. During La Nina we'll be having more cyclone between Vanuatu and Queensland. More cyclone will develop here. Okay, during El Nino we'll be having more cyclone in Fiji, Tonga, Samoa region. Okay, so during El Nino, more cyclone in Vanuatu, New Caledonia, Queensland. Sorry, during La Nina, we'll be having more cyclone in Vanuatu, New Caledonia, Queensland. Okay, during El Nino, more cyclone in Tonga, Samoa, Fiji. During El Nino. Because the ocean, the cyclone form in the ocean. Okay, the cyclone form in the ocean, and the cyclone form in the ocean if the ocean is warm. Okay, if the ocean is warm enough, then a cyclone will form. That is why our cyclone season is from November to April, because November to April is our warm season. Okay, November to April is our warm season, so it means the ocean is warmer, and then cyclone form. But when we have La Nina during our wet season, and then it means the ocean is much warmer, and then more cyclone will be formed in Vanuatu, New Caledonia, Australia region. Okay, so that is one of the impacts of ENSO on climate. Okay, the ENSO can change our cyclonic pattern. During El Nino, more tuna will be migrating to Tuvalu and Kiribati, so there will be less tuna in the Western Pacific. That's the impacts of ENSO related to migration of tuna in the Pacific, because the tuna always follow the warm pool. Where the ocean is warmer, the tuna will always go there. Okay, so impacts related to ENSO. Okay, for example, in 1997, 1998, there was a big El Nino event, and then it affects the economy of the Pacific Island country because of less rainfall during 1997, 1998. And then it affects the water system, it affects the agricultural production, it affects the coconut plantations, it affects the agriculture sector, and then it affects the economy. That was during the 1997, 1998 El Nino. There was a big El Nino in 1982, 83. That time I was in class, maybe class 2 or 3. There was a big El Nino in 1982, 83. And then amount of rainfall in the Pacific dropped. Okay, especially in Vanuatu, Fiji, New Caledonia, Solomon, PNC, the amount of rainfall dropped, and then it affects the livelihood of the people. Okay, so the main message here is that El Nino and La Nina are not El Nino and La Nina are not climate change. Okay, El Nino and La Nina are not climate change. El Nino and La Nina are the normal part of our climate system. Okay, El Nino and La Nina are not climate change, but they are normal part of our climatic system. But there's a belief that when we have global warming and climate change, and then it might increase the frequency and intensity of El Nino and La Nina. Okay, so El Nino with La Nina, or no climate change. B, ikatingting stop se with climate change, El Nino mo La Nina, or sabi ka more powerful, mo sabi happen plenty time. And now, one very important something where you must understand say El Nino mo La Nina to really no climate change. El Nino mo La Nina is normal part of our climatic system. But you can believe is that say with climate change, by misabekat more El Nino and La Nina and become more strong. Okay, so okay, you remember that one historian lo evate Olman only been fight, and then Roy Mata hemitalem se Olman bondi kamu temol kakaya. After Olman will come with them yam, only kolemoketa family blue yam. Olman will come with them bread food, only kolemoketa family blue bread food. Olman will come with them banana, only kolemoketa family blue banana. Okay, you will have a story, yeah?
No.
Who lo evate lo blesya? Inakatuan lo evate lo blesya?
Me.
Yes. Okay, so before the been fight planted lo evate, and then Roy Mata able to make peace. After olman oli karemol kakayo likam. After oli setem up naflak system. Naflak system lo evate. That family blow banana, family blow yam, family blow ena. Okay. From one name, olman only been fight plante lo time ya. From say, emi to do with them climate. Lo time ya, ibin katuan El Nino. Place semi dry, inogat tumas rain, place semi dry, kakai hemi nona, after olman only fight. Emi before finish ya. And then, Roy Mata yung button peace. So ikat one study where only been makem lo one lake lo teuma lo busia, lake ematol. And then ikat some scientists only been ko only karen soft mat lo lake ya, only ko only analyze him. And then only draw him one rainfall pattern lo efate. Only draw him one rainfall pattern lo efate. And rainfall pattern niya hindi ko as far as 3,000 years ago before Jesus Christ was born. And then lo rainfall pattern niya, yung sabi ko kay Mount, okay, lo time ikat El Nino, lo time ikat La Nina, lo time ikat El Nino, lo time ikat La Nina, lo time ikat El Nino. Amen, before Jesus was born niya. So, El Nino mo La Nina, to wala ino climate change, to wala normal path lo climate system where anything start in place finish. Since we caught in creating world. So ikat one craft where it start where when them same develop by mas find them out first time or bating by misabe same develop later we hemi talk lo craft ya hemi talk about rainfall pattern blow efate we hemi ko as fast 3,000 years ago. Or from Jesus hemi born 2,000 years. Jesus hemi born 2,000 years ago. Bema hemi ko as fast 3,000 years ago. Ikat one study braken wodi mekem lo santo. Oli drill mol coral. After oli study lo corolia, after corolia hemi soem rainfall pattern lo santo. Hemi ko as far as 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago. And then lo craft ya, yung sabi ko kay Mount, La Nina, El Nino, La Nina, yung sabi ko craft. Lo rainfall, hemi ko as far as 10,000 years ago. So the main message here is that El Nino and La Nina are not climate change. El Nino and La Nina are not climate change. El Nino and La Nina are not at a normal part of the climate system, but only got impacts. El Nino and La Nina have impact on our climate system. Okay. Forecasting ENSO, like I've already said, forecasting ENSO, we can forecast whether we'll be having an El Nino or La Nina. We can do that. Okay, we can do the forecasting of ENSO. We can do the forecasting of El Nino and La Nina. So if you we can forecast the development of El Nino and La Nina by using the Southern Oscillation Index, like I've already mentioned, or the sea surface temperature, or the cloud cover, or the wind. Okay, we can use the wind, cloud cover, Southern Oscillation Index, sea surface temperature to forecast the development of El Nino or La Nina. Okay. One something when we want them talem lo yun is suppose when you got one El Nino lo November, suppose when we got one El Nino lo November or December. El Nino ya by mi start ko lo March, April no by mi broke down. Okay. Period ya March and April. Okay. Period ya March mo April and one very important period lo sa lo climate system. Suppose we want El Nino hemi develop or suppose we want La Nina hemi develop. By mi kam koko lo March April no by mi broke down. No place ya no by mi finish. From one name from say lo March with them April now. Daylight hemi kam sota, night hemi long one. Okay, season hemi change. March April is the transition from wet to dry season. Okay, during March April is a transition from wet to dry season. So during that period, one La Nina may have broke down the time, you know. Or during that period, one El Nino may have broke down the time, you know. Okay. Suppose we make out one La Nina, and La Nina ya hemi broke down lo March April, behemi minim se rainfall blow La Nina behemi stop. Rainfall blow La Nina ya behemi continue you lo May, June, July. That is why Naya you start lo July be start raining. Be La Nina been broke down finish lo March April. Be start raining. Okay, so it's like the wet season. It's like the wet season. The wet season is from November to April. The wet season is from November to April, but it doesn't mean that the rain stops at the end of April. Okay, by rain wet season may start from November ikasem April, behemi no minim se rainfall and finish lo April straight. By rainfall by me keep on falling lo May, June, July. That is why of full up man is the complaint. Oh, lo tati July kat full up rain. I think 1 month of fresh water start making leaf lo rain. No, I mean, came on something no more. Okay. And then from say all last rainfall blow, last rainfall blow wet season, and Mr. Poltanit lo May, June, July. That is why lo May, June, July, but he still got small rain yet. But lo August, September no, by just dry good. Lo August mo September. So naya we start kat rain yet. Lo August, lo next month is lo August mo September. By place dry lo Vanuatu. Okay, so there's a lot of incidents. Okay, there's a lot of incidents in Vanuatu that were related to El Nino and La Nina. For example, this year we had a landslide in West Coast Santo. Big landslide in West Coast Santo. You been hearing the news?
Yes.
Okay. From one end, we got landslide lo West Coast Santo from say mi Tumas Ren, no? Tumas Ren, and Tumas Ren, I mean to do from say we got La Nina, Tumas Ren, we make them landslide. Got ambay flash flood. Okay, lo few years ago, you got one flash flood lo ambay. Okay, lo few years ago, you got one flash flood lo ambay. From say lo time dingat La Nina ya, after blande rain, after you make them flash flood lo ambay ya. So it got planted something when it been happen lo Vanuatu when he link with them El Nino mo La Nina. Landslide lo West Coast Santo because of heavy rainfall during La Nina. Then it became landslide lo West Coast Santo. Plus flood lo Ambay. One landslide lo Maiwo. You make them plan from say to do with them La Nina. And then you make up flooding. Flooding this year you make flooding lo fila. I mean from say to do with them all rain blow rain season with them La Nina. And then lo 1999 lo year 2000 lo year 2000 Lake Siwi lo tama hemi overflooded because it was a La Nina year. Okay, so okay, so to recap on what we have discussed this afternoon. We have discussed what is ENSO, okay, what is El Nino Southern Oscillation, and then we have discussed how to measure El Nino and La Nina using the Southern Oscillation Index and the sea surface temperature. And then we have discussed the impacts of El Nino and La Nina in the Pacific, how the impacts of El Nino and La Nina is different in Vanuatu compared to Tuvalu and Kiribati, for example. And then we've also discussed how El Nino and La Nina influence our cyclone season. During La Nina, we'll be having more cyclone in Vanuatu, New Caledonia, and Queensland, while during El Nino, we'll be having more cyclone in Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa. We've also discussed the connections between El Nino and La Nina and migrations of tuna. Okay, during El Nino, the warm Pacific bull will be in Tuvalu and Kiribati region, so more tuna will be migrating to Central Pacific. During La Nina, the sea surface temperature will be warmer in the Western Pacific, so more tuna will be found in the Western Pacific. And then we've also discussed the connections between the shifting of the warm Pacific pool and rainfall in the Pacific. And then we've previously discussed the connections between El Nino and La Nina and the economy. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can ask. But I encourage you to watch this cartoon. Huh? The more you watch this cartoon, will give you more understanding of El Nino and La Nina. And it's the title of this cartoon is Cloud Nasara. Cloud Nasara. Okay, this one is in Bislama, so we watch this one and then we end our session. We will watch this cartoon again.
Welcome long Vanuatu. Emian himi football life lo one island long Vanuatu. Ikat ol kakai or the pro lo karen. Also with music long mandres I play more time lo ren too. It come from colossal. Long time long rain. Under long sky himi also one piccola nasara. Way all cloud long Pacific only come together lo him. Waterway hemi stop inside long all cloud, hemi come out long warm pool, more all trade wind, only karam all cloud here is come together. Obviously long meteo, hemi column cloud nasara say South Pacific convection zone. Cloud nasara hemi stop move throughout lo 1 year, more imetem all season long weather from Yumi lo Vanuatu, or central season from Yumi, where hemi start long May, custom October. More wet season, where hemi cyclone season from Yumi, more hemi start from November for April every year. Where them kind weather from Yumi, imagine say hemi straight one time from all current from Yumi, is a current pool for a tata. Long Sambala year, all trade winds, only no strong, make them say warm, cool, long water, more cloud, Nasara, under from sky, only move out low Vanuatu. Kind weather, obviously long medio, and we call him say El Nino. El Nino, hemi affect can pick one lifelong Yumi lo Vanuatu, especially long wet season long Yumi. By that small rain no more, it's having fall down. By place, it's a way try too much. Small sometimes you may not have enough times. All impact long Vanuatu is a way stop long 1 year or more. After or something is a way for that long normal back again. But some other time, El Nino is a way stop long time between 1 year long Vanuatu. Long some narvala year, obviously long El Nino is a way habit. Obviously long medio, hemi for them all time La Nina. Long time long one La Nina, all trade winds, only come strong more cloud Nasaraya, hemi move from southwest direction towards Vanuatu. Let them say, hemi sabi karam more rain way ipitim nomon ikam long all islands long Vanuatu. Long time long La Nina, by sabi kat heavy rain, crown long on the hill, sabi fall down, more water is sabi come under. And then by sabi spoil all road, more damage more infrastructure, long Yumi, more full of water is sabi make them all highway Yumi plan before no good or before steam. Obviously, long medio, him start watching more make him seasonal forecast. Long look long side long rain, more dry season long all months way is to come. You have a lesson long radio, look at more information long look long try long. or La Nina, or climate change to a part long normal climate system, maybe long before finishing exam. Climate change by sabi make him say all rubbish time where he become with the Nino, La Nina, is become strong more long future. For passing way, you may sabi learning long adapt more live with them kind of climate long yumi where we got all change long him. Is helping yumi long prepare from all no good side long climate change long future. You sabi taken action time you stop karam or latest seasonal forecast or information where it come out long office long media. You sabi use all money with the information long El Nino with La Nina long preparing community for you long time way is time come. Oh no, okay then. One kind weather you got, pass one food for a day.
Okay, so that is the end of our lecture for this afternoon. So if you have any last questions, you can ask.
I have one question.
Yes.
Since you tell say La Nina supposed to form lo start lo November to somewhere around November, but stop lo March to April, right?
Yes. Yes.
But after all rain them still come kasen oceanaya July all rain them start be frone you know say tala no say La Nina by stop lo end of July frone you say no La Nina stop finish lo April but rain them still come you should tala say La Nina by stop lo July.
Okay. For me, by kutula question from me by any time we by time we by La Nina or El Nino by stop lo March April from say by ikatol indicatable ma. Ikatol indicatable na we only column se ni Southern Oscillation Index or sea surface temperature or wind strong be one something about La Nina when we stop one something about La Nina when we stop na ya ikat one tok pa ken we only talem say ni one deep La Nina from say evento he should stop lo March April finish pe he still continue so El Nino when me take place na ya have been stop small lo May June have been stop small lo March April after have intensified back again that is why lo Southern Oscillation Index graph positive rate. Remember? Time where SOI positive, you got La Nina. So now we stop La Nina and stop in place it from the SOI positive rate. The regarding question for you, you tell them say you ask them say about La Nina Bulonaya. The full time where La Nina finish lo March April after by meteo metalem say La Nina finish lo March April be minim say by rain stop straight away by metalem say all last rainfall blend by stop all down ni from by metalem say hemi se makmo sem wet season na wet season hemi start lo November finish lo April be minim se rainfall by mi stop lo end lo April straight from se rainfall hemi no sabe calendar you mean no all man you sabe calendar you tell them oh today mi number 1 April na mi number 2 na mi number 3 be rainfall hemi no sabe something rainfall hemi fall down lo on way blow him So even though yumi olman ba yumi dalam se rainy season ni finish lo April. De hemi na minim se rain by ni finish lo April from se nature hemi kat on way nature hemi kat on ways plan. So that is why on paper the rain season stop in April, but rainfall blow wet season all makas plan by stapol town lo May, June, July yet. So by place by me just strike out no more lo August mo September. Hemi semak no more by me telem se lo nature ikat o lack time. O lack time. O lo nature ikat o lack time. Iminim se time we bikwela rene. Time we bikwela rene by me na minim se takaberivo by me flooded straight away. After a few hours, and then takaberivo me se flooded. From se ikat one lack time. Hemi semak no mo suppose we ikat one bikwela ren lo metel blosanto lo lands. The flooding by Chaskasem river lo coastal area lo 3 o'clock lo afternoon. Also got one lack time. Okay. Hemi senak no mo same time we by kat one bikwalaren na ya lo botila. The hemi na minim se by bikwalaren the flooding straight away. Because we got one bikwalaren na lo botila lo 2 o'clock. The flooding by just happened to 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So they got one lack time. No? So isamak no mo lo rain season blame. Rain season blame by me finish lo May. But ikat one lack time. So all makas rainfall lo wet season by stapol town lo June, May, June, July. That's why by all month every 3 July every 3 July by me rain. Atau betul I think 1 month start make them leave the rain. No. I mean to do with a more lack time lo rainfall no mo. By rainfall by me just try rain by blessed by just try good no lo September with them October. So come back lo question for you. Suppose we meteo hemi look se SOI hemi negative. Lo March April by me tell them se La Nina mi finish now from se indicator blame mi se SOI mi negative finish. Ata meteo by me tell them se La Nina by mi finish but rainfall blame by insta for town. Okay. The manner when we and if you want something where people only need to understand them say lo nature pa ikat or lack time lo something. Okay, with them by me showing one craft lo blessed lo even look by me one craft here. One craft here we make him about we make him craft here about all rain lo imi lo Vanuatu. So wait. Craft. Ini kan one craft lo beli saya, ini about ini lo Vanuatu. One craft lo beli saya, oke. Craft lo beli saya. Oke, ini belum anaichom. Pak look, rain season begins lo April. The rain by staff fall down it, kam ko lo. August September na by rain by just drop good. And then best let me try. Ini lo anaichom ya. Antar lo botwile tu semak. By wet season by me finish lo April, but rain by staff fall down it. After by place by just strike good lo August mo September. So come back lo question to you. Meteo by me looking no mo tang we esa why mi neketi, pa mi ke one declaration se la nina mi finish. O sa boso mi look se si se temperature mi call, and then pa mi ke one declaration se la nina mi finish. Pe after pa mi ke one warning na mo se la nina mi finish, but all rainfall blame mi expected niya. Okay.
Good.
Any more question? No, Kata?
No.
Okay. Suppose we will get any question along the way, or tomorrow ko, you guys have email me by any. Email me and no, but Dianna, but it's a same level, huh?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so what time here? I think by let's say even slow afternoon yeah, by me passing back chairmanship because of Diana.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tikona. Make sure say all students will pull up something today. And it's a few weeks before exams. So me hope say you've like grasp them good all ideas where Mr. Tikona hemi about from say and so by anyone law or something where by hemi definitely by hemi come out the exam. So make sure that you survey how to explain him. Also when Mr. Tikona hemi explain him. Make sure say you survey all implications play him, all impacts play him in the Pacific. Impacts lo Solomon Islands and Melanesian region, impacts lo Kiribati with the Micronesian region. And I think lo week 15, suppose you fly things say you got need, lo you got one revision class. Then you fly message lo Moodle no more after le by you have got one revision class where by if you still have questions after by Mr. Tigona, he must have come back lo explain them back again. Inquiries where you may cut and by you must have a go over law, especially now all impacts because our exam is coming up. I think it's going to be week one of the exam session. So sometimes in week one you should have your exam. I mean, I think the timetable is out yet, but just be ready. I will share Mr. Tikona's email on Moodle so that you can directly send him your queries if you have any. Also, just before we finish, there was a question posted on the discussion forum regarding the grading system. Someone posted on the discussion forum regarding the grading system. For the moment, as soon as we upload your marks on Moodle, it is automatically converted to the percentage equivalent and not the raw marks. That's why what you're seeing is like 0.0 something. So that's the percentage equivalent. So when we amend that, then you will be able to see your actual raw marks. Otherwise, I can send it to you individually. If you send me a request, I can send it to you individually from week 1 up till today. Your marks for discussion forums and tutorial assessments. Otherwise, thank you, Mr. Tikona. Thank you, Thomas, for kindly you, and thank you for always making yourself available for supporting student law SCES222E. Just like me, they also appreciate your valuable contributions to the class. And we would still like to involve you in the revision just before the exams, if that is okay. Otherwise, thank you to the students for being patient and staying online and following the class until now. All the best for the rest of the week, all the best for finalizing your assessments and submitting. submitting your assessments is suppose you look Lombodo, they got one announcement you have next week. You have all of next week to submit any late submissions that you may have. Just you miss out on any forum discussions, you start submitting that all week next week. You submit them after by any update and grade sheet. Other than that, yes, thank you, Thomas, Mr. Tegona. Let's give him an applause and say thank you. Hey, you guys are muted. He can't hear you.
No, Miriam.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Thomas. Nice afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Nice afternoon.